Aloha, good morning, everyone. My name is Derek Miner, and I'm here to present my senior capstone proposal on how AI disclosures shape audience trust, authenticity, and creative value. An overview of the creator. I am Derek. I am a student at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. I'm a transfer student. I have a previous bachelor's undergrad from the United States Military Academy, West Point. I graduated in May 2019. I went to Cheatham County Central High School in Tennessee, graduating in May 2015. My current major is in creative media with an academic focus in video game design and development. Just for a little bit of backstory on my previous bachelor's, I was a philosophy major with a minor in cybersecurity, blending concepts of uh, cyber law, warfare, and ethics. And my previous capstone with West Point was on the ethical use of lethal autonomous weapon systems. So it's really interesting to see how far technology has progressed since then. And now that I'm, a civilian, I get to explore these themes in the creative sectors of media. For an executive summary, I'm going to go over my plans for senior capstone, my thesis, my objective and rationale for my research, and address the significance of my proposed project. My thesis statement is that AI disclosure shapes audience trust, perceived authenticity, and creative value more strongly than the actual presence of AI in the creative process, because audiences often interpret disclosure without context as evidence of lowered effort, compromised ethics, or diminished authorship, human authorship. The objective and rationale for my research is that my goal is to evaluate how AI disclosure shapes audience trust, expectations, and perceived creative value in independent digital media. I will go over how AI workflows are becoming standard across creative fields, creating a real need for workable disclosure practices that reflect current production realities. Independent developers rely on AI-assisted tools to stay competitive with large studios, which makes transparent communication essential. The study looks at how disclosure influences audience perception before any direct interaction with the work. It compares labeled versus unlabeled AI. It compares labeled versus unlabeled AI use to see how each shifts trust and evaluative judgment. It identifies disclosure strategies that maintain transparency without weakening the perceived credibility of the creator. And the overarching aim is to outline ethical practice disclosure guidelines that independent creators can confidently apply in real projects. The plan for my senior capstone. I plan to complete an independent project-based capstone that results in a playable game prototype designed as both a creative artifact and a research instrument. I will develop a demo game using documented AI-assisted workflows for planning, refactoring, and prototyping, while deliberately excluding any user-facing generative AI content, such as art, music, or narrative. All visual and audio assets will be created by me. The game will be designed to collect structured player responses during play, recording perception, trust, and authenticity data as part of the gameplay experience. At the conclusion of each session, the game will output anonymized response data for analysis. The project directly applies my CM489 research by transforming disclosure theory into an interactive, measurable system. Now I'll go over the significance. This project contributes to the current scholarship on authorship, creative labor, and human AI collaboration by testing how disclosure framing alters audience trust and perceived authenticity. Rather than debating whether AI should be used, this research examines how transparency practices shape the legitimacy of creative work in contemporary digital media. On the right here, you can see how relevant this is, as this was just from November 26th. You have the CEO of Epic Games, one of the platforms that is competing with this other tech giant Valve for these disclosure tags. And you can see that where Valve is championing the people, they are being the Robin Hood of disclosure. You have other significant actors that are arguing against these disclosure tags, saying that they are a hindrance on productivity and everybody is using them. So we need to just move on with the fact that AI is a part of the industry now. The future implications here are that findings from this project can inform ethical disclosure standards for game developers, digital artists, and platform policymakers, providing practical frameworks for balancing transparency with audience trust as AI-assisted workflows become standard across creative industries. Another significant point is that this project addresses a growing gap between technological capability and audience trust in AI-assisted creative work. By focusing on disclosure as a psychological and cultural mechanism rather than a technical feature, this research expands current discussions in game studies, digital media theory, and human-computer interaction. On the right here, you can see an example of Steam's current disclosure tag. It is on every marketplace item that a author may elect to provide. They have a few options. They can either admit that they used it, or they can lie about it and still use it and move on without disclosure, and it creates further complications down the line. The current disclosure tag encompasses everything from generative AI to AI workflows, such as tools like Notion, Slack, Cursor, or even things such as programming copilots like Git Copilot and other boilerplate programming that has any sort of assistive refactoring in the production process. It currently is too broad, and it is too damaging to even put this on your marketplace item because it immediately devalues it for the consumer. The future implications are that the results of this project can guide platform policy, creator best practices, and curriculum design by offering data-driven models for ethical transparency that preserve both innovation and cultural value as AI becomes embedded in creative production. Here are a few data points. Starting with the fun pictures, because everybody likes pictures more. We have a few charts over here provided by Getty Images, Visual GPS. They're one of the largest platforms for providing just stock photos and imagery. And they put out some data this past year about how authentic images and videos are pivotal in establishing trust. And of the consumers polled, 98% agreed. That means that people have a genuine appreciation for authenticity in digital media. Of another poll, 76% agreed that it's getting to the point where I can't tell if an image is real. This kind of highlights the significance of the disclosure tags, where somebody needs to know whether this is a real image produced by a real person, or if this is a digitally altered fictional picture or not created with human authorship. And then lastly, 87% agreed that it's important that an image is authentic. Moving on to data and usage and disclosure in games. For games released in 2025 alone on Steam, roughly 1 in 5 now features generative AI in some capacity. This is cited by Forbes. On Steam, approximately 7% of all games, that's roughly 8,000 of 111,000, self-disclose generative AI usage. That's not to say that there aren't more people doing it, as we can see in the statistic above. It's just that fewer people are admitting that they're using it. And the issue here is that some people are doing it for the reasons of trying to promote sales. Others are being flexible about what they consider AI usage. And some would consider the restrictions of Steam's AI policy to be too binding. Onto audience trust and skepticism. 53% of US adults say that AI will worsen people's ability to think creatively. Only 16% say it will improve it. This was done by the Pew Research Center. This kind of is an indicator in social phenomena that people devalue AI and its ability to assist individuals in the creative process or in the academic process. 54% of US adults say that they don't trust AI to make unbiased decisions, including 27% who don't trust it at all. This data was provided by YouGov. We can see these trends as certain giants like Twitter's Grok model are becoming increasingly biased in politics. We can see it through OpenAI's ChatGPT models and Google's Gemini, that when engaging certain topics, there's something behind the scene that is orchestrating a lot of the output, which causes people to believe that it is not making unbiased decisions. There's a lot of bias that goes into the creative process. And this is considered in what cybersecurity would call it kind of a poison injection to the model. So if we're, doing creative media and we're baking a cake, if we're, speeding up this cake process by injecting a bunch of arsenic, people are going to have a discomfort with this poisoning process that's going on here. 46% of consumers report distrust in online AI content and believe identifying AI generated material is getting harder. Uh, this statistic is really interesting because you will find through many corners of the internet that are kind of focused on art, whether it's Blue Sky, Twitter, Patreon, Reddit, places where people feel comfortable and expressive of their work. There's now this phenomena of people going down the thing, going down the threads and asking, is this AI? Is this AI? Where people can no longer distinguish whether anything is AI. And it's becoming this new tech witch hunt where people are becoming accusatory of anything that looks too good or too mechanical that it must be in some capacity AI generated material. And nearly 90% of consumers surveyed say transparency about AI usage matters to them in visual media. The target audience for this research. This was an interesting question that kind of Charlotte and I went back and forth on about who is the target for this research. And I did finally come up with the conclusion that this research is targeted to the consumer. The consumer is the endpoint in the creative process. When a developer begins the process, they pass through the mediums that are requiring this disclosure, and it is being appraised and valued by the consumer. So this project is designed for audiences who encounter AI disclosure through creative media and are directly influenced by how transparency is presented in interactive digital work. The research focuses on groups whose trust, engagement, and perception shape the future of creative production. In Group 1, we have the independent game developers who use AI-assisted workflows to support small team or even large team production. We are also including larger players like Activision and Ubisoft and Blizzard. The second group here, we have industry stakeholders responsible for platform policy, disclosure standards, and creative ethics. This includes Steam, Epic Games, GOG, and Amazon Games. And then lastly, we have players who encounter AI disclosure labels when evaluating games and digital media. The interactive process, or the iterative process here that creates a feedback loop is that game developers are trying to meet demand or even accomplish goals to get them to a consumer, but consumers are very fearful of bad content or AI itself. And so they are demanding that the platforms that are providing this item, this end state, this game, or other digital media, and that there's consumer protection involved, FCC style, where we are demanding that the medium they pass through is protecting the user, and those are what the disclosure tags have become. They are currently, as Tim Sweeney would argue and some others, they're too broad, they're undefined, and they're quite pointless because when you get back to the point of the game developer, it's nearly impossible to say that everything isn't touched by AI at this point. I was talking with Charlotte again about how even UH West Oahu's current description of AI is so broad and bland that it says anything that could possibly require human intelligence. And it's like spell checks can require human intelligence. Memory storage requires human intelligence. If I'm using Obsidian or some other narrative design tool to create branching nodes of dialogue, that is in some way, whether it's doing things on its own or generating content, AI. Even Photoshop, the flagship of digital photography editing, uses a majority of their tools can be considered AI, such as the spot brush, which now is rebranded as generative fill. Things that you wouldn't technically consider to be AI by modern, well, by traditional sense, have now become encompassed under this umbrella, where in game production, you can't even talk about NPC behaviors and pathfinding and navigation as what was accepted AI, NPC behavior AI, now anything that has this two-letter acronym has become demonized and weaponized against the producer. So my proposed solution for this is that I believe the proposed solution addresses a critical gap in how AI disclosure is currently framed by accepting that AI integration into creative work is inevitable and focusing instead on how it can be implemented responsibly and fairly. This project solves the problem by identifying blind spots and biases in current disclosure practices and proposing more precise, context-driven frameworks that protect emerging developers from misinterpretation while preserving transparency and creative integrity. My preparation process. In pre-production, I will organize my game design documents. I will develop structured game design documents, technical planning sheets, and workflow maps to define systems, mechanics, and AI-assisted development pathways. During production, I will build the playable demo through iterative development, integrating documented AI-assisted workflows while applying design, programming, and asset creation skills learned through my coursework using the Unity engine. I chose the Unity engine because it's the one that I'm most familiar with, and I have invested a lot of tools from the Unity Asset Store to accelerate my workflows, what even the App Store and Unity would consider to be non-AI tools that help assist with boilerplate scripting and programming. And then in post-production, I will analyze collected player response data and present findings through my professional portfolio, including process documentation, technical breakdowns, and research-driven conclusions. Deliverable 1 will be a public demo build, a fully playable WebGL demo hosted on Unity Play that allows public access to the finished research game. The build will function as the core iterative artifact of the capstone, or interactive artifact of the capstone, and serve as a controlled environment for testing disclosure framing and player perception. So the WebGL is a output medium just the same as making a game product for Windows or Mac or PlayStation or Xbox. It is kind of browser focused. And it is a controlled interactive environment for setting perception and disclosure with a single source build as the primary artifact. So it's not going to be multiple versions of the same game. It's going to be a single game that allows divergent paths to get to this solution of the data that we're aiming for. The deliverable 2 is a portfolio project page, a dedicated capstone project page hosted on my professional portfolio website that serves as a permanent shareable research hub. Page will document the full development process, design decisions, AI-assisted workflows, and provide direct access to the playable build and research materials. This will be a hub hosted on spellixgames.com. The centralized capstone hub with permanent shareable project link, documentation of development workflows and research, and a public access. So it'll be shareable. It could be, you can return to it. I'll host it as long as y'all would like me to. And it will kind of show my creative process on a display front. It'll kind of be that marketing aspect of the product that I produce, and it'll be a great experience for branding and marketing. Of course, this game will be free. Deliverable 3 will be an embedded data collection system, and the game will incorporate a player-controlled result screen that generates a summary of gameplay decision and performance. Rather than silently transmitting data, the system will allow players to voluntarily copy their results to their clipboard or optionally submit their score through an explicit opt-in button, and no background tracking or involuntary data collection will be implemented. So the goal is at the end of this demo game, during this demo game, they'll be guided through a series of questions, much in the same way you would complete a survey form that will ask them questions about their perceptions of what constitutes generative AI, what shouldn't be required to be disclosed, and different questions along the way to kind of get to a final solution of what is the player perception of a way moving forward with disclosure. I know that I've seen plenty of conversations boil down through AI is bad, don't use it. Oh, but it helps the small indie dev turn a 6-year game into 6 months of production. And they're like, okay, well, they can use some AI, but not all AI. Generative art is bad, but boilerplate coding is good. And you can see that as people's what is initially in opposition to AI with the disclosure, their walls slowly come down as we can narrow down to a point of what is ethical AI usage and what should be required such as the ethical use of the compiled data sets? Is it more acceptable to use AI generated imagery if you produced all the images that went into the data set to produce that image? So there are interesting questions that need to be asked, and this embedded data collection system will kind of address a lot of those. And the players will have the option to put it back onto that same research hub that I had in Deliverable 2, and I can create a little app that will produce charts that will allow people to quickly scan and digest the information provided, completely voluntary. Thank you for attending my capstone presentation. Are there any questions?